You know, for these videos, I'm gonna have to have Dad look like something. I might have an idea. Gotta see how he feels about it, though. Let's go see. Brother.
Yes.
Brother, I have a question. I need to make you, like, a little avatar thing for the videos. Can I draw you as just, like, a buff axolotl fisherman?
Sure.
Sweet. Thanks, Dad. Love ya! The plane is a go. The plane is a go.
I wish to tell you the tale of the King of the Lake. This being was always strange. It lurked at the bottom of lakes, catching fish upon fish, always pulling harmless pranks. It would crawl along the murky depths, waiting for boats to pass by, jumping out, scaring the people on board. Perhaps they'd capsize, only to gently sit them back up with a laugh like, I gotcha. Of all the pranks that he pulled, he liked popping out of the most random of places to scare people the most. Perhaps a log, perhaps a bush, perhaps the weeds, perhaps from under your boat itself. It became a known game to try and guess where the King of the Lake would pop out, and people, even, would start challenging this trickster and try and pop out and scare the king himself. It didn't always work, but every time someone scared him, they knew retribution would be inbound. The king was known to have a family of 4 spirits, many of them having to deal with nature. One was a small mushroom sprite, the youngest daughter. She was sociable, smart. The next was his wife, the guardian of the trilliums. She was always industrious, powerful, always working on herself, her body, her image. Together they made a hell of a power team. And though she was small, the guardian was powerful. The third was the Calamity, a child born by a dark storm. The storm was dark, and yet, when the water spirit found the trillium, everything became bright. And she embraced the Calamity even as the mushroom spirit, her own child, came into being. And together, they formed a small family. Oftentimes at the lake, they could be seen playing the hide-and-seek game. The king would be walking across his domain, perhaps wading through the weeds, and suddenly, boom! The Calamity would come jumping out of the weeds, and he would jump, curse her a little bit, and the revenge would begin. The children obviously mimicked their father, and oftentimes engaged in these shenanigans and pranks. Sometimes they'd pour buckets of leaves on each other, sometimes they'd jump out, scare each other, and oftentimes get a little mad, but knew they could pay each other back. The Trillium Spirit, of course, did not enjoy these games as much. She grew very tired of these games amongst her children and her man, but knew it was a part of the people she loved. It is said that this mischievous water spirit, the King of the Lake, had various abilities, the first being his keen eye, but only when it came to finding fish. He could lose various objects at a time: the keys to his domicile, a wallet on top of a car once. It drove away, and the entire time they drove, he had no idea it was up there until they reached a restaurant. Yes, even spirits will go to restaurants. Get your head out of the clouds. Luckily, the wallet was recovered, and it had not fallen off, but it's always been a funny story to tell. The king, occasionally, talks in his sleep. He would shout out in the midst of the night, echoing across the lake, "Stocks are down 50%! In a nightmarish haze, glancing around, wondering if he'd been ruined, when in reality, he had not. It was a nightmare, and a strange one at that. Further abilities have been reported for this strange being, such as this mischievous man occasionally likes to give voice to animals. If you ever come across a talking dog, walking, talking, conversing as if that is normal, it is often a result of the King of the Lake. He will temporarily give them voice to voice their shenanigans and explain from their point of view just what they're going off of. "Oh ho ho, I'm Quincy the dog," he would go, and narrate their actions as they went along, much to the hilarity of the other spirits of the lake. Above all, the king has always been kind and compassionate, but with a rare anger that crashes like thunder in retribution often for those he loves. Some strange behaviors that have also been told in legend and lore include repeating song lyrics, even especially if they're wrong. One lyric over and over and over again. But usually this will only last a few days, but if you hear song lyrics echoing across a lake, you can often wonder that is the king. The king is a wholesome being. He remains by the side of all the companion animals that pass through the hands of the many spirits of his family, even until their last moments. He's a man that will shed a tear when he sees those last moments. He misses them, and he hates seeing them go, but he's always there to hold them. He's loved by many, and all the spirits in his company are so glad to be around him. The king, however, struggled through many portions of his life. He works so hard for everyone and gives people so many chances, sometimes too many. But he's a loving, compassionate person who goes and attempts to do his best for every person that is around him. For those who earn his kindness, they have earned the greatest friend that they will ever know. And those who make the mistake of harming him, of wronging him, they have lost the greatest friend they could ever have. That is why, when you go to a lake and you see the man jump out and startle you and you feel that momentary anger, you should just laugh it off. For the king often gives life advice, though you may not want to hear it at the time. Life, after all, is about preaching and teaching. He may tell you things that you don't entirely understand at first. He may lecture you. He may explain things from a different point of view. But oftentimes, when you sit down, you think it over, the king's advice is sound. Life is about enjoying small moments, learning to live and be balanced in your life. Sometimes you have to get out. You have to see nature in all of its glory. Catch a fish, go on a walk, and find balance in everything you do. Time and time again, Calamity had heard exercise, doing something for your mind, doing something for your body, doing something with your family. And while Calamity may struggle with that to this day, her dad has always been there to try and help her get through that much. Perhaps one of the sweetest stories comes from how the King of the Lake met the Trillium Spirit. For while the king was under the greatest storm, trying to raise Calamity, trying to do so much for his family, even though it had yet to grow, she was there to support him, his greatest friend, his greatest ally. And though he struggled, she was there. And though he was worried, she was always there. She came with him across the country, traveling far and wide from places she had known all her life, but picked up her roots and transplanted herself in an area unknown. She trusted him. One night, the king walked her down through a darkened beach to candles laid out in a heart. And the king asked the Trillium Spirit, "Would you marry me?" And she did. Years later, the Mushroom Spirit would arrive in her own fantastic glory. Fireworks are said to have gone off. The angels sung. The stars aligned. But that is of the Mushroom Spirit's own word, of course. She, of course, was bombastic, dramatic, but always caring and empathetic, even to the point where sometimes it was too much. But the four made an industrious family relationship, sometimes bickering, and storms would brew in the distance, darkening the horizons, and they would go to the separate corners of their lake, but loved each other, went on trips, drove each other crazy, and just were a family. And perhaps that is the greatest strength of the King of the Lake. He takes care of his own, and he loves them with every bit of his big heart. I love you, Dad.